have here an article just under a year old from the Wichita Eagle, the newspaper in Wichita, Kansas, a periodical that I'm sure most of you are quite familiar with. No sarcasm. Okay. So October 11th, 2008 reads, in a bar in the small town of Peabody, Kansas, in the middle of the night, astronaut Nick Hague's family huddled around television screens. Family members breathlessly awaited the result of the rocket launch, the culmination of a childhood dream for Hague, a 43-year-old Kansas native and U.S. Air Force colonel. It was to be Hague's first flight to the International Space Station, launching at 3:40 a.m. Thursday from Kazakhstan. NASA coordinated a private event at Peabody's Thornberg Inn exclusively for Hague's extended family, sending astronaut Victor Glover to be a personal envoy to the family there. The Eagle was invited to the event. Before launch, Glover made a presentation about the mission, boasting about the reliability of the Russian-made Soyuz rocket the two were to launch in. The atmosphere in the bar was jovial, essentially a reunion for the family who had driven and flown in from across the country to watch their relative launch into space. Family members wore custom-made Nick Hague crew jackets with patches sewn on representing NASA, the International Space Station, and the official mission that took place Thursday. At 3:39 a.m., most everyone in the bar pointed their phones towards the TV. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, takeoff. Cheers erupted throughout the bar. A couple of minutes after liftoff, however, a frantic message, failure, 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 blared across the live feed. Hague and Ovechkin were shown being violently shaken in the vessel, and shortly thereafter the feed cut out, to be replaced with a look inside NASA's mission control room. A booster had failed, and a failsafe propelled Hague and his comrade out of the shuttle. Thankfully, after much prolonged time, they were found to be safe. Then, after long embraces with family, Hague was left with feelings of defeat and questions. So much time, so much investment by he, his family, by NASA, by those around him on this mission, a lifetime spent to that day, and then failure. The question, what now? What next? This morning, we kick off the 2020 stewardship campaign. I did not warn you all ahead of time because I wanted you to show up to church. So, surprise. I hear this gospel lesson this morning, and I fear failure. In this gospel lesson this morning, these apostles approach Jesus and implore him. They say, increase our faith. I want Jesus to say, well then increase your pledge. But he doesn't. Instead, he gives this beautiful image of faith as a mustard seed. Now, you and I are probably familiar with mustard seeds of our faith. The mustard seed, of course, I'm sure you know, the smallest of the seeds that can grow into the greatest of shrubs that are actually so great and so prolific that they are difficult to prune, difficult to control. Now, I was a biology major in college. You know, as a plant, when a plant has many small seeds, that's because evolutionarily they're spending less time, less investment, less resources on each seed to produce more, knowing that some will survive and flourish. I oppose that to the corpse flower that recently bloomed at the Huntington Library. Actually, while Annie and my family and I were interviewing for this position, the corpse flower only blooms once every 7 years. So tremendous investment and care must be taken each time it blooms. That's the opposite image of a mustard seed this morning. Many, many seeds that can flourish beyond our imagination, beyond our understanding. You all will receive more messages of stewardship and pledge cards and a letter this coming week. And I ask you to give in 2020 for a variety of reasons. You know, first and foremost, as a response to a loving God who creates, who redeems, who sustains, giving out of a sense of gratitude for all that we are and all that we have. Also, giving of resource, time, talent, or treasure is a reminder to ourselves that that resource, money in this case usually, but also time, does not control us. In my last parish, I had a lot of young families who did not have a lot of expendable income. And they would say to me, I don't have any extra money to give. And I would say, start somewhere. Because it teaches you, it teaches us that resource does not control you. You give it away. I would say, if you don't give to the church, but please give to the church. But if you don't give to the church, give somewhere. Also, I ask you to give in 2020 because we need to pay for things. I think there was a very pragmatic aspect to this conversation. We need to pay for electricity. We need to pay for HVAC units. We need to pay for personnel costs. I often remind ourselves that, churches in the Episcopal Church are self-sustaining. We are not given money from diocesan officials. We actually give money to diocesan officials to support their and our ministry together. That's an important part of this conversation. And lastly, and perhaps most apropos of this reading this morning, I give because Church of Our Saviour has so many beautiful, wonderful, life-giving mustard seeds. If you want to know why Annie and I and our family are here, it's because we see in Church of Our Saviour a community with rich history, wonderful liturgy, amazing music, a beautiful campus in a complex city, outreach initiatives, long-standing, that have been present in this community for decades. This past week, I was able to tour, finally, the full extent of the Our Saviour Center. It's just simply amazing what the Our Saviour Center does in this community. Transitional housing with Bill Doulos, an amazing witness in this city. Church of Our Saviour has a multicultural component, trying to reflect the demographics of our neighborhood. I had more things I wanted to go to this weekend than I had time to go to just on this campus. And that is because of your giving. Past, present, and future. So I ask you to give out of a sense of gratitude for loving God. Give out of a sense of owning one's relationship to resource. Give because this church is going to use it well towards the betterment of our community. And because we want to dream together. Going back to Nick Hague, feelings of failure and fear being propelled out of this rocket less than 1 year ago today, had a choice to walk away, to walk away in failure, or to go back. He appealed to NASA to let him back on the next mission. Somehow he convinced his wife to get back in a rocket. That would not work in my household. It would not. Got back on the next launch to the International Space Station. Arrived successfully. Had a 203-day mission aboard the International Space Station. 6 months. 3,248 orbits around the Earth. 3 spacewalks. And he arrived safely back in Kazakhstan this past Thursday at 3:59 p.m. local time, because he had the courage to get back on board. I think I know Church of Our Saviour's history enough to know there have been times when we have reached the stratospheres, and times when we've fallen off in anxiety and feelings of failure. I invite you to give in 2020 for many, many reasons, but may we have the courage to get back on board and dream together.